Әріптестер, қадірлі қонақтар, Назарбаев университетіне қош келдіңіздер. Бүгін осы форум шеңберінде бәріміз жиналып отырмыз, өте қуаныштымыз. Осы залға қазір қарап отырсам, біздің магистранттар мен докторанттар, профессорлар өкінішке орай көбісі қатыса алмай отыр. Өйткені бізде қазір интенсив сессиясы өтіп жатыр, бірақ оларға да осы мәліметті хабарды міндетті түрде жеткіземіз. Залда біздің түлектеріміз отыр, Назарбаев зияткерлік мектептерінің қызметкерлері және Назарбаев университетінің қызметкерлері. Бүгін біз жоғары білім беру мектебінің зерттеу жобаларының нәтижесін сіздерге таныстырып өтеміз. Ол өте күрделі, біз үшін өте күрделі, бірақ маңызды зерттеу жобалар болып табылады. Өйткені тек біздің профессорлар емес, тек біздің докторанттар мен зерттеушілер емес, сонымен қатар бұл үлкен серіктестіктің жемісі деп ойлаймын, жемісі де Пенсильвания университетінің профессорлары мен Кембридж университетінің профессорлары мен сонымен қатар Назарбаев зияткерлік мектептерімен бірге өткізілген зерттеу 1 жыл емес, 2 жыл емес, 5 жыл не 6 жыл зерттеп келе жатқан тақырыптар. Сол бүкіл жинаған ойымызды, тапқан нәтижелерімізді осы кітапқа ойымызды түйіп, осы кітапқа басып, кітапты шығарып отырмыз. Сегодня мы вам будем презентовать три книги. Первая книга – это очень такой большой титанический труд, монография под редакцией профессора Дэвида Бриттиса «Реформы системы образования и интернационализация. Кейс реформы школьного образования в Казахстане». Я хочу сказать, что работу мы начинали вместе с профессором Бритисом и доктором Хайратом Курапаевым, который сейчас обучается в Колумбийском университете. И со стороны Назарбаев интеллектуальных школ была большая поддержка от граждан Татарии и от Николая Ритовны, который сейчас уже играет на нашем школе. Это Назарбаев университета. Бүгін тағы да мен шын жүректен өзімнің алғысымды 2 адамға айтқым келіп отыр. Ол Рауан Кенжеханұлы және Нартай Айшын. Осы 2 азаматтың арқасында кітап қазақ және орыс тіліне аударылған. Бірнеше ай жұмыс істедік. Осы жұмыстың нәтижесін бүгін презентация ретінде осы елімізге үлкен сый ретінде бүгін тартып отырмыз. Сіздерге көп рахмет. Вторая книга, она тоже издана издательством Кембриджского университета. Наверное, она мне немножко ближе, потому что я больше провожу исследования в высшем образовании. Книгу писало очень большое количество людей, у нас было 20 авторов, из них 11 международных авторов, 9 это наши казахстанские авторы, что отрадно, что среди них были наши докторанты, научные сотрудники, которые затем уже сами стали профессорами высшей школы образования, но конкретно профессор Дархан Белялов, организатор этой книги. Третья книга, над которой мы, я не скажу, что мы очень долго над ней работали, потому что собирать материал было очень легко, и тема была очень актуальна для нашей страны, это финансирование высшего образования. Здесь бы я хотела большую признательность сказать, большую благодарность выразить двум авторам, профессору Мhammeду и профессору Рите, которые очень быстро взяли в оборот весь этот научный проект. Результаты наших исследований, они были достаточно интересны, особенно для Министерства образования и науки, такой транзитный переход на подушевое финансирование. С большим удовольствием я сегодня хочу приветствовать авторов этих книг, естественно, профессора Дэвида Бриттиса. Я всегда говорю, что Дэвид помог нам создать, наверное, понять, что такое образовательная наука. И вместе с нами Дэвид ездил во все казахстанские университеты, сколько сельских школ посетил Дэвид. Наверное, я до приезда Дэвида не посещала столько школ, как сопровождая Дэвида. Дэвид был инициатором создания Казахстанской ассоциации исследователей в сфере образования. Я помню, как он меня за руку водил и знакомил со всеми членами Европейской ассоциации образования, когда мы только put ANU and Kazakhstan on the map of the educational research. So, сегодня Дэвид приехал к нам, большое ему спасибо за это. И мы еще один из авторов, Светлана Багитовна, Синова, связь управления АО «Лиш». Это больше наша сестринская организация, это младшая сестра или старшая сестра Назарбаева университета. Работаем очень давно вместе, и не только по исследовательским проектам. И было очень приятно, что в этой книге в команду авторов вошло очень много сотрудников Назарбаевской интеллектуальной школы. Мы сейчас говорим о том, что все реформы должны быть evidence-based. Да? И вот, наверное, Миша это как раз яркий пример того, что research-based, data-driven, evidence-based response. Спасибо, Светлана Багитовна, что сегодня нашли времени и присоединились к нам. Ну вот я представила Мхаммеда, автора книги по финансированию. Лиз Винтер сегодня приехала на партнерс-митинг, осталась на EHELF и специально осталась для того, чтобы сегодня ответить на ваши вопросы по содержанию книги. С Лиз мы работаем тоже очень давно, и большая поддержка у нас не только по исследованию, но также по академическим программам высшей школы образования. Ну и, наверное, самый для меня близкий и самый дорогой гость сегодня – это декан факультета образования Кембриджского университета, моя коллега Сьюзен, которая сегодня будет главным дискуссантом, и у вас будет возможность тоже задать ей большое количество вопросов. I want to thank you for coming and contributing your time in the discussion and presentation of these books. I wish you success, new professional achievements, prosperity, and big funds. So this money is important for research. So wish you good luck. Now I want to give the floor to my boss, President Kassa, for a 2-minute speech.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this highly anticipated book launch event. Just want to ask actually, how many of you here are current or former students of the Graduate School of Education? Okay, close to 10 students. All right. How many of you have read the books? Oh, almost everybody.
Compulsory.
Compulsory reading or?
Read the book, no degree.
Maybe we should put you on the podium rather than reading here. A little bit more on a serious note, I think I'm thrilled. The reason why I asked this question is, and I'm thrilled that you've actually all read it, is because I really do believe that if I would be a total novice to education, to the education system in Kazakhstan, also a total novice to what some of the key legacy issues are that are still with us in the education system, I could probably think of no better reference book than the first 2 books that have now been published. And the first book is now dating back maybe 5 years ago, but I think the analysis and the way forward indicated seems to me as pertinent and valid today as they were 5 years ago. And Kazakhstan has obviously gone through a remarkable trajectory of reforms ever since its independence. And the education sector is probably the one that has kept up the reform ethos for the longest while. While in some other sectors we see that the reform enthusiasm had ebbed and waned at times. Education sector somehow has been able to keep pushing forward, and that has a lot to do with the principal actors involved. And I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to everybody involved in the education sector here in Kazakhstan, and in particular my colleagues from the Nazarbayev intellectual schools and their sort of steadfast partners, as well as the whole team from the Graduate School of Education and the initial Center for Education Policy. I think in addition to the two books, the center was also at that time involved in the so-called roadmap of education sector reforms 2020. And I'm also thrilled that in addition to these two formal books, we also have the opportunity to listen to the authors of the monography about the financing approaches to higher education. And I think it's a great complementary piece to the books. I look forward. I have read a little bit of it, browsed through them. I cannot say that I have digested every part, but I do have maybe some questions later on. But congratulations. It's great to see the authors and editors here with us, although I think the colleagues from Penn are not here, but Cambridge is present. I think that's a good sign. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and that's a great presentation.
Thank you so much, and President Kassa emphasized that we have more Cambridge people than Penn, because we have no one from Penn today. And we have one more Cambridge representative, Professor Kalu McLaughlin, who was the editor of the series of these books on Kazakhstan. And now she represents...
Greetings from Cambridge. I'm Colin McLaughlin, one of the series editors of these two books, which are published by Cambridge University Press. I want to say how much we value these two texts, and now that they are translated, their impact is considerable. I've come to appreciate my time of working in Kazakhstan, how valuable translation is and how important it is, both to the spreading of work and to the understanding of work. So I think these two texts will make considerable contribution. I'm really sorry I can't be there, and I want to offer my congratulations to the editors, to the researchers, to the authors, and to the translators of these two texts.
A group who made a very big support in translating this book, and now I want to invite.
Құрметті әріптестер,
көп рахмет сөз бергендеріңізге. Естіле ма? Сәлеметсіздер ма? Құрметті әріптестер, көп рахмет. Біз үшін бүгін сіздердің араларыңызда болу, жай ғана болып қана сөз алу өте үлкен құрмет. Біріншіден осындай сенім білдіріп, осы жұмысқа араласуға мүмкіндік туған үшін ризашылық білдіргіміз келеді. Шын мәнінде аударма өте күрделі және өте маңызды білім саласы әрі өнер деп айтуға болады. Тіл үшін берері, ғылым үшін, білім үшін берері өте мол. Қазір біздің мемлекетіміз осы салаға үлкен көңіл бөліп, үлкен аударма жобасы жүріп жатыр. Ол жайлы естіп біліп жатқан шығарсыздар. Соның аясында біз Кембридж университетінің баспасымен үлкен бірталай аударма жобаларын жасап жатырмыз. Атап айтсақ, 5-6 оқулық аударылып жатыр, әртүрлі гуманитарлық саладағы. Оның сыртында алғаш рет 60 қазақ әдебиетінің авторлары, 30 жазушы, 30 ақын ағылшын тіліне Кембридж университетінің баспасынан басып шығарылып, бүкіл ағылшын тілінде сөйлейтін әлемге тарайын деп отыр. Бұндай тәжірибе біздің тарихта ешқашан бұрын болып көрген жоқ. Бұл біріншіден біздің еліміздің, мемлекетіміздің осындай үлкен жетістігі, осыған жағдай жасап отырған. Екінші, біздің Кембридж университетінің баспасы секілді, Кембридж университеті секілді үлкен әріптестермен қалыптасқан осындай жақсы қарым-қатынастың жемісі деп білеміз. Біз келіп алғаш рет Кембридж университетіне өтініш айтқан кезде Назарбаев университеті, Назарбаев зерттелік мектептермен арадағы бар тәжірибеге сүйене отырып, сол оң тәжірибені есте сақтай отырып бізге келісім беріп отыр. Сондықтан сіздерге мыңда бір рахмет сол үшін. Мына аударманың аясында да менің ойымша қазақстандық, қазақ тілді білім беруге, педагогикаға келетін жаңалық өте көп. Оны сараптап көп айтуға болады. Бір ғана нәрсе, білім беру деген ұғымның тек үрдіс емес, сонымен бірге өзінше бөлек процесс, ғылым білім саласы ретінде қазақ тілді зерттеушілер, қазақ тілді білім беру саласын ұйымдастырушыларға алғаш рет келіп жатыр. Dear friends, colleagues, thank you so much. It's a truly honor and privilege to be part of this project, and I just want to say thank you, and on behalf of my team, Bilim Media Group, National Bureau of Translation, I'd like to say that please accept it as our humble contribution to the great job that you are doing here. Thank you.
And now you see the floor is given to Professor Rita.
Maybe I can do it from here.
Yes,
First,
you want me to put up the
if you would please. I have to say I'm absolutely. Oh yeah, I have to talk to this. I'm feeling very nervous today. Usually I feel quite confident, but this is a very exciting moment for me to come and meet so many old friends and colleagues who've been involved with our research and with the development work with NIS over the years. My job in this short introduction, well, I'm supposed to limit it to 15 minutes, and I'll do my best to do that, is not just to talk to the book that I edited with colleagues here, but to all three books, and I'll try and be as inclusive as possible. But please forgive me if most of my excitement focuses on the translation into Russian and Kazakh of the book that we did, because this has been 5 years in the shaping, and I know a lot of people here have put in a huge effort to achieving this, and it's really fantastic to see the product. So I picked out 3 themes. Goodness knows what's up there, but I'm looking at 3 themes here, which are more process themes than about the substance of the books, which I think raise interesting issues about what all 3 sets of authors have been involved in. And they're to do with the translation of the language of educational policy and practice, the international and intranational translation of educational policy and practice, and on research collaboration internationally. So those are the 3 themes. But first, a word about conversation. Sorry, I'm not...
Yeah, can you give it to me then?
You'll be doing much better than I. Thank you. In the introduction I wrote with Aida to the first book, we wrote about the book as part of 2 conversations. One was an international conversation between scholars and educationalists in Kazakhstan and a wider international community around these issues of educational reform and of international transfer of educational policy. And one dimension of that conversation, I think, has been extremely successful. Over the last 5 years, we've seen scholars from Kazakhstan at the major international conferences of the European Education Research Association. I think you had to charter an entire plane to bring all the people from NU and NIS to the European conference, and at the Common Comparative and International Education Society conference. Kazakhstani scholars have been out there talking to the world about what you're doing in Kazakhstan and about the research that they've been doing. And this is very exciting, to the point that an editor of one teacher education journal said to me one day, I'm getting deluged with papers from Kazakhstan. What's going on? Mind you, he had never complained about being deluged by papers from the United States or deluged by papers from the UK, but apparently receiving large quantities of papers from Kazakhstan was something different. And what's going on is that Kazakhstan has found a voice in the educational research community, and it's using that voice to speak loud and clear. So that's a great development, and I hope the work that we've done here together has reinforced that and supported it. But there's perhaps an even more important conversation which needs to go on inside Kazakhstan. And it's no good just having a book written in English if you want educationalists, people in the ministry, scholars, people in the community to engage in debate about educational reform in Kazakhstan. It has to be in their own language, or at least two of their own languages. I did joke to Raoul about another 118 translations, and it was a joke, but of course there are many people who use languages other than Kazakh and Russian, so maybe we'll see another 118 volumes turn out in the next few years. But for that, we needed the translation in Kazakh and Russian, and I'm hugely indebted both to colleagues in Nazarbayev University, in NIS, and now your identity is the IBG, ABG, BMG, and around your own personal intervention to make that possible. That's hugely important, and I hope a very significant contribution to educational debate and this ongoing discussion. So one of the issues that very act of translation raised, for those of you centrally engaged in it, were the problems of translation itself and the language of educational policy and practice and research. And I know part of the project that Raoul and his colleagues are involved in is one of contributing to the enrichment and growth of the Kazakh language and the literature which is available through Kazakh. And one of the things I find it very interesting to read was, I think, from some correspondence from Alima at NU. Alima, thank you for that. We haven't had a chance to talk about it since. But she was saying that she's had to coin new words in Kazakh to capture some of the concepts that were embedded in the book. There just wasn't an equivalent. So she's actually contributing to the development of the Kazakh language. And who knows, looking back over the decades, we may see the roots of a whole new vocabulary in Kazakh in the translation of this book. That's exactly the way these things develop. And in Russian. Yeah. And that difficulty reflects a lot of the problems, and so far we're just talking about translation of language, that just aren't equivalents, and language is embedded in society, in history, and in culture. And if you've got the roots of language in different histories and different cultures, then things are not going to fit. And I'll just give you two examples myself, both drawn from the book actually, and both drawn from the experience of NIS colleagues in the Centres of Excellence. And the first was the struggle they had with the notion of lesson study, and the distinction between lesson study and the more conventional and accepted familiar notion in Kazakhstan of the open lesson. So trying to explain that lesson study, as drawn from the Japanese and Finnish tradition now, worldwide tradition of lesson study, is not the same as open lesson, but communicating that through translation can be quite difficult. If you add to that the further problem of how do you translate action research in a meaningful way, you get into what I gradually realized were even more culturally embedded issues. Because action research, teacher action research, presupposes a view of the teacher's professional role as an extended professional, going beyond teaching and learning and even assessment in the classroom, into much more collaborative relationships, into inquiry and self-evaluation. And that's not firmly implanted in the Kazakh tradition. It also requires a revised view of research itself as not just something done in universities and with kind of large research projects, but something which can intelligently and sensibly be carried out by teachers in schools. So a notion like action research and the relationship between research and practice conveyed in a notion like action research is not something you can convey simply by translating the word action and the word research and coupling them together. It's tied into a whole professional culture. And another example, I just illustrate this briefly, was grappling with the notion of critical thinking, which again, what language do you choose to convey that, was clearly something which the translators struggled with. And I know Alima has other examples, perhaps she'll share some of those with us from her experience in translation. So will other people here. I know a number of people sitting around here have played a very active role in that translation. So the very business of translating language is full of complexities and hazards and dangers, I think, in terms of communicating the wrong messages and not just failing to communicate at all. And if translating language is difficult, translating policy and practice carries even more difficulties. And in the introduction to the book, chapter 1 of the book, edited by Hartley and Ruby, they issue a warning against at least the facile, the too easy translation of educational policy and practice from one society to another. It's riddled with risks, it's riddled with the possibilities for misunderstandings, it's riddled with the possibilities of distortion. Some authors, like Iveta Sinova, who many of you will know, and Gita Steiner-Kamsi, use the language, almost criminal language, of hijacking educational policy and undermining global concepts in their translation into local situations. I prefer the friendlier language of indigenization, perhaps, or accommodating outside policies to modern ones. And yet all three books, and I've got some quotes from all three on this, all three books reflect on and describe practices of policy borrowing, whether it's NIS looking around the world for what it can discern to be the best practice. And NIS really did travel the world. I mean, I remember you were in New Zealand looking at early childhood education. In Italy, you were in Quebec. In Estonia, looking at multilingual education. You were in Singapore, in Korea, you were in the UK and the United States. It was a bit like Japan at the beginning of the 20th century. You know, the doors opened and you went out into the world to hunt what you could find. So all three books reflect on and illustrate, in one way or another, reference to international practice to inform local practice. And this does raise some big questions about whether, in your view, and we're some way down the line with both those developments, whether this does contribute helpfully or usefully, or whether its effects are negative because it builds up resistance to what some teachers, say in higher education or in school education, might regard as alien practices. So here are a couple of questions for you to consider, and maybe the panel to respond to when I finish this introduction. And then finally, all three books rest on international educational research collaborations. And I've quoted here the foreword to Hartley and Ruby's book, which celebrates and remarks on that collaboration. For me, this has been one of the most fruitful and rewarding experiences I've had in my professional career. And I think you know, it's not been without its problems and its difficulties and its issues, and we've had to work through a number of those. But it's been, for me, very rewarding, and I hope to colleagues in Kazakhstan too. Though part of what I think we have to acknowledge, and Darkan or others may want to comment on this at the end, is there are kind of interesting tensions in the power relationships which exist between international collaborators and local researchers. Aida may have some thoughts on this as well. Though I think she's kept us pretty well under control. Those of you who know Aida will know that she... So these all three texts rest on international collaboration. They also rest, of course, on collaborations within the country. I mean, we're hugely indebted to the support we've received from the ministry, but most importantly, in the case of my book, from schools. I don't know whether any of our school directors or school teachers here from the schools that we visited, but they were uniformly welcoming in the way that only Kazakhs know how to welcome you, which is usually with a table absolutely laden with food. And they've opened their doors to us and made us feel part of their own communities, and for that collaboration too, we're extraordinarily grateful. But it does pose questions, and I know there have been tensions. Who gets credit for what's authored? Who controls access? Who actually owns the data? Who has the right to use the data? These are important questions which I think, you know, certainly with hindsight, and I think we learned this after about a year of collaboration, you really have to be clear about from the beginning in order that people are treated fairly. So I think we've all learned some lessons about what might constitute fair and balanced collaboration in these relationships. But we'll hear perhaps from Darkan, Aida and others at the end what do they think of that. But that's a question, I think, for all of us, and it's one which has continuing relevance as we continue, as I hope we will, to work together across frontiers in research in Kazakhstan. Thank you very much. Sorry, turn it off.
Thank you so much. And when we have discussed how we continue our book launch, David gave a very nice suggestion that we have these questions in the presentation, and if our discussions can start with the answering to these questions and share your own vision and insights on this. So if you can, Lely, if you can put the presentation again, and we can start not with the first question, but let's start with the last questions that you addressed to the audience. But Susan, don't you mind if you ask you this question with a very rich experience of being a part of international research teams? How do you see the, how could you answer this question? What different insights are brought to the research by researchers who are insiders or outsiders?
My sense, actually, reading the text is that there are different insights, and it always strikes me that these partnerships are classrooms in the very best senses of the words. In other words, new texts arrive, new individuals are there in a partnership and so on, and some of the writing of the different writers, the chapters, is coming together in a conversation to generate an understanding about something that is a shared moment of sets of concerns. But what I would like to say is about any kind of international collaboration, and so I do have a question too that I'd like to put to the team, is, and I'll just reflect, I did a very large project with European colleagues, and it was governing youth trajectories across Europe, so youth transition. And our Polish partner had never heard of, couldn't understand the word governing. Okay? There was no such word in the Polish language. So here that was the title of our project, and yet at the same time one of the major partners had no clue and had to work very hard to try and figure out how to put that word governing into their lexicon in order to understand that. So from our side in the project, and I guess from your side, it's, you sit back and you think, you just assume the rest of the world have the same language as you. But I guess my question I actually want to ask the team too is, what did the partners, let's say, UPenn and Cambridge learn? Not just about translation, but insights that made you think very differently about your own practice back at home. In other words, I can see you've bought lesson study, but there were choices here. I can see you bought action research, but there are also choices about why those things. Were there questions asked back to the other side in the project around why these conceptual resources, perhaps why not others, so that this was not just simply a relationship of, some might say, imposition or a gentle version of imposition, but actually a set of conceptual resources that enabled you to have conversations even back into your home space.
Okay, well, is that on? I'll give you one example, and Asel and Nazipa may remember this. When we went to a little village school in the snow, kind of quite a long journey out of Taraz in the south. And one of the conversations we had there, we asked if we could meet with some of the members of the school board. And school boards, as you will know in Kazakhstan, are at quite an early stage in development. We were interested in understanding what functions they performed and how. And we were introduced to two men, one of whom was a farmer and the other ran an agricultural machinery business. And they talked about the school with clearly great affection. And we asked them so what did they actually do? And they described an event which took place each year. He said the Teachers' Council met first, and they came up with a list of things they needed to help make the school work better. And he said, then the governors and the teachers all came together and had a meal. And he said, at the end of the meal, we seem to have sorted most of those things out. And this included if they needed a new television monitor, or in one case, they needed trees planted around the perimeter of the school because the winds were too powerful. Now, this is not a conventional view of school governance, which in the UK now takes on heavily bureaucratic forms. I mean, a school is expected to have something like 54 policies agreed and approved by school governors, and they're subject to inspection, including the role of governors and so on. And yet in this village community, here was local community working with the school, working supportively in a very kind of familial, family type relationship. And it struck me that if we've lost that in our communities in the UK, we've lost something rather valuable. Turning governing bodies into bureaucratic instruments of policy oversight is not a constructive thing. So how we recover some of that feeling, and there were other features of the school, like the intimacy of the relationship of the school director with the village community. She was sorting out marital problems in the village, which were impacting on the behavior of children. There is something, and I'm now working a bit with rural schools outside Cambridge, and see some of those qualities in rural schools, but they're also overwhelmed by a new bureaucracy. So somehow we've got to preserve the integrity of schools as communities and as parts of the community, and not allow bureaucratic imperatives to stifle all that quality. That's something I've taken away, and that's just one thing. But most of all, I mean, it's a huge privilege for somebody coming from the UK to have the opportunity to gain insight into this world of Central Asia. I mean, in the days of the Iron Curtain, we used to talk about how people on this side of the Iron Curtain were shut off from any understanding of the West. But the Iron Curtain also operated the other way. People in the West had no clue. They didn't know where Kazakhstan was. They had little idea of what was going on in here. And I think to open those doors and to put us in the position of talking together, working together, that's been a huge benefit that certainly I've enjoyed. I don't know whether anybody else wants to.
Okay, thank you David so much, and thank you Susan for your comments and for the questions that you try to challenge our discussants to start with. David started the issue of the understanding, cooperation, collaboration in conducted research. And so I want to put my second question to the research team members, Liz and Darhan. How did you manage to build a real partnership in research? What challenges have you faced? What lessons have you learned? What issues do you want to share with us?
If I could come to this issue from a perspective of insider-outsider. So David has alluded about, this basic concept. When you do research in Kazakhstan or elsewhere in the world, then you basically have a team of outsiders, maybe somebody who came from Cambridge or Penn a bit, and do research in the country, and there is half of the team, roughly half in different publications, different numbers, are constituted by local researchers. In our case, mostly junior researchers. But I think there's a huge benefit of having long-term strategic partnership, and that's why research is only possible if it goes for an extended period of time. And an outsider. So what makes an insider? Insider went through the schooling system, went through higher education here, knows a lot, about the system on his own experience. Positions. Sometimes in the school, when we were visiting rural schools in Aktau, for instance, 20 years back, right, about schooling and what it looks like and how it's. The person who comes from the outside, the outsider, so let's name the outsider, right, becomes insider over time because people like Professor Bridges here, Professor Hartley, and Professor Ruby, they over time became the insiders. They became the experts in education. And another benefit also to have in-house researchers such as Dr. Ali Mhammed, who is a foreigner but came to Kazakhstan, studied the system extensively, and now become an insider of the system. So I think that inherent kind of dualism about the insider-outsider really really mitigates itself or moves away as the time passes and as the expertise grows. And power balance, I think that was one of the things that we were supposed to talk about. We should remember this part of the goal of research projects such as this was to build capacity of local research teams. And I think this was successfully achieved. And we've learned so much. You couldn't believe how many people worked at once on a huge data set collected at different schools in vivo. We all had a chance to code, to discuss the coding trees. It took us forever, by the way, to reach to the coding. I believe there was endless discussions of how we code, to make sure that we all code the same way to ensure inter-rater reliability. So I think it was very collegial, very mutually beneficial partnership. I didn't feel any significant power disbalance. There are sometimes additional perks to being a Kazakh when you go to the field. Sometimes, because the respondents take you as your own fellow Kazakhstani person, and they do open up a lot to to explain some different things, and actually you reach to some interesting insights because they trust you as being your own and being responsible with the data. And I don't know if Liz, do you want to say anything?
Well, I was only going to add that in fact I am completely useless on my own in Kazakhstan because I cannot speak Kazakh, I cannot speak Russian. So I actually would have been completely powerless without very, very bright young people around me who were supportive of this project and had enough cultural sensitivity to guide me when I was making the worst of errors, such as paying for something for somebody who's a member of the Aida tribe, which was, I think, quite a serious mistake that I made once and I remember now. So culturally we were guided, and I think I very much value the fact that we were also able to build relationships with the people I look around here, and mostly people have seen me in a very rough state in the field, and I think that I thank you for your tolerance, and I also thank you for the skills in making me feel culturally assimilated as far as was possible, and the knowledge and that you gave. So I think the power is also the fact that we understand very much this. None of this would have happened in any shape or form without some very bright young people and the will of the ministry and NIS, who also I think have been very supportive of these projects, and so I think some of the we're not often very humble at Cambridge, but occasionally we are, and I have to say that this is completely and utterly in the hands of young people that has come out of this project. So that's all I can add, is that thank you for having us.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Thank you, Darhan, for sharing very detailed pieces of your memory here. And my next question to the next couple, and you can see that there is a perfect gender balance on the podium. You see 4 boys and 4 girls sitting. So 50 and 50, and I'm very proud of it because we are struggling now with the feminization of teachers in Kazakhstan, and you can see that educators can be balanced. And my question is to Svetlana Ispusinova, the chair of NIS, and as Darhan said, the foreigner who became an insider, Professor Mhammed. The question is on this citation of Steiner Hamsi about the imported policies in Kazakhstan. So, do you think that Professor Hamsi is right saying about adopting international policies and then pursuing independent interest in different directions? Is this what is happening to the global imported policies in Kazakhstan? And we would like to start with you, Ms. Ispusinova, the policymaker, senior policymaker in school education, a very autonomous institution, and then the educational researcher lead. We can follow and continue. Thank you.
Я хочу ответить и Лизе, и Дэвиду. Во-первых, сказать господину Бриджесу огромное спасибо для того, что он открывает Казахстан и, в частности, ниш всему миру через свою книгу, которая на английском языке пришла в Кембридж и рассказала о нашем проекте. Хочу ответить Дэвиду на несколько вещей. Во-первых, Дэвид Бриджес, он член семьи НАЭС. Все мы очень любим его, он член попечительского совета. Это человек, который рядом с нами с 2011 года, и поэтому все, что написано в этой книге, это написано однозначно нам понятно, потому что мы участвовали, принимали активное участие в дискуссии, когда эту книгу писали. Но я хочу сказать Дэвиду, что мы продолжаем писать эту книгу, продолжаем писать ее своей работой ежедневной, потому что она продолжается, и вот эти 5 лет после того, как книгу опубликовали на английском языке, мы продолжали свою работу. Когда мы читали первый раз эту книгу, то мы увидели между строк глубокую его озабоченность. Как он сегодня говорит, мы для него предстали в качестве охотников, которые поехали в Зеландию, поехали в чартерные школы, в Сингапур, в Гонконг и пытались понять, что же нам дальше делать и как нам принести международный опыт. Но Дэвид сейчас как бы есть такой бумеранг, потому что сейчас есть охотники, которые приехали в Назарбаев, интеллектуальные школы, из всех этих стран, из того же Гонконга, Сингапура, а из Великобритании в том числе, для того, чтобы посмотреть опыт ниш и увидеть, что мы все сделали правильно вместе с вами, и мы ниш поставили, ну, наверное, приблизили к тому, что называется устойчивым развитием. Но свидетельство, чтобы вы поняли, что это на самом деле так, есть не только от того, что у нас много разных визитов. У нас было 18 экспертных комиссий, когда мы проходили аккредитацию CIS, и вот эти люди, они достаточно поражены тем, что мы делаем, и они рассказывают о нашем опыте по всему миру. И в частности, это видно еще на нашей международной конференции, когда, например, в прошлом году среди 2500 участников конференции было много делегаций самых разных из Прибалтики, из Молдавии, из России, из Украины, которых мы вообще не знали. Но они услышали про нас, наверное, они прочитали вашу книгу и решили узнать, что мы делаем у себя. И есть второй аспект Аида еще, это трансляция опыта. Все, кто читал книгу, вы знаете, да, были целый ряд предложений, рекомендаций, которые нам дали Колин Маклафлин и Алан Руби. Они показали весь международный опыт Дьюи, как распространяется, как идет диссеминация по миру того или иного опыта, переживая за нас, как за экспериментальную площадку. Потому что Дэвид и наш стратегический партнер Кембридж, они соавторы ниши. И поэтому сейчас я могу сказать спокойно, что трансляция состоялась. Все вы знаете, что обновленное содержание сработало. В этом году мы уже апробацию в начальной школе практически закончили. Очень хороший диагностический отчет показал, что результат начальной школы достаточно успешный, эффективный. И проект здесь состоялся. Мы в этом году вступаем в старшую школу. Это сложный период. Я думаю, что мы вместе по этому пути еще пройдем. И вот трансляция, то, что охотники к нам пришли теперь другие, обмен произошел, и есть такой позитивный момент. Я думаю, что следующую книгу мы с Дэвидом напишем, присоединиться к Назарбаев университету, как к нашему стратегическому партнеру, и посмотрим, как мы выстоим дальше, как какие-то, чтобы бури нас в меньшей степени затронули. Поэтому еще раз от имени Ниш я хочу сказать Дэвиду спасибо, безусловно, Рауану с Нартайм за то, что вы перевели книгу и сделали ее более доступной. Мы продолжаем трансляцию. Вот я хочу сказать, что сейчас дальше у нас продолжает BMG, еще другой проект, когда они берут под свое крыло сельскую школу. Мы берем на себя методическую часть. Рауан вообще переворот колоссальный организационный и материально-технический там. Здесь мы с ним партнеры. Может быть, в следующей книге появится и такая глава. Давайте напишем ее вместе. Спасибо всем.
Спасибо большое, Светлана Владимировна. Спасибо, что вы напомнили, что мне нравится философия shared governance, потому что за ней следует shared responsibility, когда все ответственны и никто не ответственен одновременно. Да? Спасибо большое. So, Alice, please.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for everybody for being here to support this amazing work. And I'm very happy to hear, and I always feel that I'm an insider, and I'm very happy to be to hear it from Aida and Darhan and confirm it in front of everybody. Alina has told me that too, and Zakir, so thank you. The reason I'm saying this is because actually being an insider of this kind of research, and David has mentioned the time earlier, time really plays a big role in doing this kind of research when you are an outsider trying to become an insider or communicating with the insider. So that's one thing. The other thing is working on issues of outsider-insider in finance of education and higher education. I remember myself sitting in an interview, I'm not going to tell you where, for ethics reasons, and I do research with policymakers. I was sitting with a person who speaks very good English, one of the policy officials, and we were talking about credit. What I meant is credit hours. We were talking for about 15 minutes. He was talking about student loans, and I was talking about credit. This actually opened up my eyes to a very interesting thing, which is let me adapt my language of finances to the local context first, so I can get the information. One of them is the credit, for example, cost. I use cost. People understand it as price. I understand it as etc. So there is a lot of what I call lost in translation that could happen if I would be here only for 2 days to do research and go. It's not gonna work. I have to be here for the time I am here to be able to do a good research in which 3 parties are involved. Researchers, participants, and researchers as outsiders and researchers as insiders and participants. Because participants are giving us information and we analyze it, but they need it back to see what we actually did. And everybody has asked me, can we see what you found? And that's what we did with this book of sustainability. We are giving it back in Kazakh and Russian exactly to help people read about what we have found. So that's for one issue. I guess the issue here is really the timing. The timing, and Darkhan has mentioned this very clearly. Timing is very important in this kind of research. You have to make sure that you master the rules of culture, the rules of what's going on in the country before you claim that you are a researcher, let's say in Kazakhstan, for example. So the culture is very important. The other important thing that I wanted to mention is how ideas are being perceived by people who are given the opportunity to read what we found. Should it be only policy borrowing? Should it be something that, okay, we will fix your education in Kazakhstan. Why don't you read Denmark or Netherlands model and follow it, and that's it? No. So this book, actually, when you get a chance to read it, and it's going to be an open access book, you will see. I won't go over the book right now, but one of the things that we did is we tried to make sure that our conceptual framework goes with the data that we have. And we also offered examples, models in different countries, just as examples of what could work for Kazakhstan, not what works. So we looked at Sweden, we looked at Netherlands, we looked at Denmark, we looked at one state in the United States, Colorado, etc., in different financial models, and we would offer what the model is about, and we would offer where Kazakhstani higher education reform in the finances could be helped if they want to look at the Swedish model or the Danish model, etc. So we are very careful in the book at not being trapped with policy borrowing. We are offering options, and you will see that in the conclusions and recommendations we are as open to debate on these issues as possible, because we are not answering the questions, we are trying to learn as we go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ali. From this moment you are an officially naturalized Kazakh. Anyway, present yourself. And you have touched a very good question. In my understanding, it's not only about the importing of policies to Kazakhstan, it's about policy translation, that we should be very careful with policy translation. And you also mentioned such phrases, lost in translation. And I do hope they'll be lost only in linguistic translation, but we should not be lost in the political translations, in the form translations. In coming with this moment, the lost in translation, I would like to address this question. Where is this question? To address the question on translation to our editors, Dr. Alima Ibrasheva and Dr. Nazipa Ayubayeva. on their things, on this question. С какими проблемами переводчики сталкиваются при переходе между английским, казахским и русским языками? Мен есімде біз кітап аударғанда, өзіміздің 4-ші кітап жазғанда, сол жерде бір сөз болған. Governance, management, leadership. Сол үш сөзді қалай аудару керек? Governance, басқару. Management, ол да басқару. Leadership, енді ол көшбасшылық дейді, бірақ ол да басқару. Сонда сол үш сөздің арасында қайсыны таңдаймыз? Үшеуі де басқару, бірақ аудиторияға айту үшін үш несінде түсіндіру керек қой айырмашылығын. So I'm very happy that we have now the National Bureau of Translators. So now I'm going to shift all this headache to you. And now you have to think on these small nuances, how it should be translated. And so my question to these ladies, what difficulties or what the most interesting moments in translation or editing the book you have faced?
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Я уже отправляла письмо профессору Бриджесу перед тем, как мы готовились к этой презентации. Я перечислила несколько типичных примеров того, с какими проблемами мы сталкиваемся в русском языке при переводе образовательных текстов. Но мы вот сейчас с Нартаем работали бок о бок очень долгое время. Так была такая сложная работа. Спасибо Нартаю Шиму за такое терпение. Это был совместный труд. Огромная благодарность. Типичные ошибки, конечно, во-первых, связаны с тем, что есть фразеологизмы, которые трудно понять для русскоязычного читателя. Да? Это была первая такая распространенная трудность, которую мы пытались восполнить. Второе, я почувствовала, я не первый раз занимаюсь редактированием образовательных текстов, и у нас, кстати, в Казахстане большая проблема с тем, чтобы перевести, отредактировать на экспертном уровне хорошие академические исследования по образованию и политические исследования. Это очень редкая у нас специализация, и это должен быть, с одной стороны, человек, который имеет филологическое образование, а с другой стороны, это должен быть человек, который экспертом является в образовании как таковом, знает, что такое эмпирические исследования. И вот, к счастью, я филолог, русский филолог по образованию, и это мне помогло. Я с удовольствием этим занимаюсь. Значит, вторая проблема связана с тем, что есть такие термины, которые в русском языке доселе не существовали. Но я могу похвастаться, что наш коллектив авторов, например, ввел в образовательную терминологию Казахстана такое выражение, как трансферабельность, да, Дэвид? То есть transferability было на английском языке. Нам переводчики перевели это как переводимость, да? Но мы посчитали, что это выражение, оно слишком простое для того, чтобы отразить вот этот процесс переноса реформ, которые существовали в лучшей практике международной, которые переносятся сюда. Поэтому мы посчитали, посмотрели, что это такое, мы нашли термин финансовый. Есть трансферабельный аккредитив понятие. И мы подумали, что это такое выражение, которое существует в финансовой сфере, но мы ее адаптировали, это выражение, для русского языка, сделали редакторское примечание, и мы очень надеемся, что теперь этот термин будет существовать в казахстанском контексте в образовании. Очень надеемся на это. И я считаю, что у нас в этой работе мы выработали уже какой-то такой бизнес-процесс, да, Кастубаева? То есть у нас партнеры многие удивляются, когда мы переводим, мы говорим, что поверх перевода у нас еще есть экспертная редакторская работа. Мы после переводчиков сажаем еще экспертов и переводим тексты, и тем самым тогда получается удобоваримый текст, который действительно понимается. Поэтому вот такие впечатления от этой замечательной работы. Я очень рада, что была частью этого коллектива.
Спасибо большое, Алима Хаджетовна. И теперь, если вы поделитесь.
Құрметті әріптестер, қайырлы күн, барлықтарыңызға рахмет осы шараға келіп отырғандарыңызға. Мен қазақ тіліндегі аудармасын оқып өзімнің үлесімді қостым. Сондықтан кішкене айтып кетейін қандай қиындықтар болғанын. Қазақ тілін оқығанда өте мұқият оқуларыңыз керек, өйткені қазақ тілі орыс тіліне қарағанда да өте қиын. Өйткені ол жерде қолданылған ғылыми тіл біздің қазақ тілінде қолданылмаған. Сондықтан мен оны редакциялап жатқан кезде қандай да бір түсініктеме беру керек па, беру керек емес па, сол бізге өте қиын болды. Қазақ тілінде, например, policy borrowing деп айтып жатырмыз. Кірме саясат деп аудардық біз оны. Бірақ қазақ тілінде кірме саясат деген сөз жоқ. Оны біздің ойлап шыққанымыз, біздің мүмкіндігімізше сол кірме саясаттың қасында policy borrowing деп ағылшынша жазып өттік. Кірме саясатты түсіну үшін түпнұсқасын ағылшынша оқу керек. Енді біз айта алмаймыз, осы бүкіл кітаптағы жазылған терминдер, қолданылған концепттер жатады, қолданылған ғылыми тұрғыдан жасалған теориялар бар. Олардың барлығын біз қазақ тіліне аударып сіздерге жеткізе алмаймыз. Сондықтан біздің үлкен үмітіміз бар. Кешірімді қарап, оны түсінуге тырысу керек. Сосын policy borrowing'ді түпнұсқада оқу керек. Енді біз бұл бірінші редакциясы болып отыр ғой кітаптың. Сондықтан біз ойлаймыз, енді кішкене өзіміз үйреніп, тіл байлығын көбейткеннен кейін ғылыми тілдегі осының тағы 3-ші версиясы, 4-ші версиясы деп шығып жатады ғой. Соған қосуға болады. Бірақ қазіргіде өзіміздің неміз кішкене шолақ болып отыр. Қазақ тілінде тек қана ағылшын тіліндегі терминдерді беру арқылы ғана түсіндіруге тырыстық. Осыны қосып кетейін деп едім. Рахмет.
Рахмет, Назиба Алтынбековна. Тәжірибеңізді бөлістіңіз, тағы да бір жаңа жобаларға ой тудырып отырсыз. Енді байқаған шығарсыздар, осы сценадан кішкене залға жылжып келе жатырмыз. Келесі біздің уақытымыз, 20 минут уақытымыз, 15 минут уақытымыз, ол QA session.
По поводу термина Action Research, который мы, когда делали уровневые курсы, ввели это в практику, и оно у нас перевелось как исследование практики в действии. И это сегодня, мода, наверное, в Казахстане среди педагогов. Мы на международной конференции видели, Эллиот в прошлом году был потрясен тем, что 400 учителей из общеобразовательных школ пришли для того, чтобы показать Action Research, показать свою практику. Это то, что сделал НИШ, а самое важное, то, что делает сегодня страна. Вот этот Action Research и перевод как исследование практики в действии.
Спасибо большое, Светлана Магитовна. У нас про Action Research слишком много, да, говорит Назиба Алтынбековна. Она хочет разрушить наш academic fundamental research и все время хочет нас заставить заняться Action Research сейчас.
Провокация была именно оттуда.
Да, я поняла, кто виноват. Вот сейчас, если вы открываете Инстаграм, да, там задают вопросы, говорят, за лучший вопрос вы получите, там, я не знаю, приз, кто телефоны дает, кто сертификаты дарит, поставьте лайки и так далее. Мы сейчас тоже хотим сказать, что за лучшие вопросы вы тоже получите призы, и у наших авторов вот перед ними лежат книги, которые будут вручены автору самых интересных, самых провокационных вопросов. Поэтому сейчас будьте активны, мы вас призываем задавать острые вопросы.
Good day, my name is Gulnara and I'm a former JSC student in an educational leadership course, and I'm happy to be here as a former student, and I'm leadership. I have leadership position at NAS Center for Educational Programs. So, we have read this book when we were doing master's program, and this was must-do thing, and it's extremely enlarged our mindset, and it gave us a lot of knowledge about education, because we were teachers and we came, to know how to move forward, what to do. And it really broadened our mind in terms of the policies and how things work and how to move forward. And with our group mates, we usually talk about policies, about education, and one of the top questions is about ranking the schools. We usually, in our country, we rank schools according to the students' achievement, student success in Olympiads, and we even more sometimes measure teachers' experience or their achievements according to the students' achievements again. And we know that the world is changing, VUCA world, and even the notion of the knowledge is education is changing. So the question is, do we need to rank schools, and how? Is it really important in this really VUCA world, this kind of notion? Thank you. And I will try my luck to get the book.
Thank you.
Sorry, what was the word? Do we need to rank schools? Rank them.
Dictate.
You want
кому?
Well, you asked the question of somebody who has very strong views. I would absolutely not rank schools unless you have at least 200 rankings, and all schools can be top or in the top 2 or 3 of one of those rankings. I mean, that's the only response. I think ranking schools is entirely invidious and a counter-educative practice. The ranking is always on a selection of achievement. It always then marginalizes other equally important educational benefits and advantages in the schools, and it focuses attention on something extrinsic rather than what is intrinsic to the school and its relationship. So I hate school rankings. I hate international rankings too, which equally have a distorting effect on people's educational practice. So I'm a philosopher. I'm normally very cautious about issuing any certainties in education, but I will state that without any reservation or qualification. Forget ranking. It doesn't do anybody any good.
Thank you.
I don't rank in universities. I think I worked at one stage as director of the Association of Universities in the East of England, which was an association of 12 universities, very diverse. They included Cambridge University, but they also included what at the time was University of Bedford, which was a small university serving very much the local community. Most of its students were first-generation entrants to higher education. We had Little College of Agriculture, we had Norwich School of Art and Design, we had a huge polytechnic conglomeration. They were, in my view, all doing outstanding jobs, but different jobs. And if you tried to rank them on the same scale as whatever Cambridge might offer as its achievements, or indeed what University of Bedford might offer, it would be totally misleading. They have many different contributions to give, and any ranking system obscures the distinctive roles that higher education can play in contributing to the welfare of community. So I'm hostile to that too, including the global rankings, which are absolute nonsense, even if Cambridge comes top in many of them.
I admire David because he has such an...
That means he's going to disagree with me.
No. He has such a clear view on rankings. I can tell you that I tend to agree with him, but only to a certain degree. When our university was initially sort of still on the drawing board, and the feasibility study was prepared and approved, and somewhere along the line it said, and by 2020, Nazarbayev University shall be ranked among the top 20 universities in the world. And when I saw this, I said, please strike it out. No? Simply because to the extent that I'm sort of skeptic about ranking, it is because you can gain everything. And you can tweak things, it's very subjective often, a lot of it is reputation, but reputation, how do you create reputation? We can manipulate as well. But more importantly, universities are all about a place of creating knowledge, disseminating knowledge, and each university has its own sort of over time developed focus and areas where it is best known for. It's, in that sense, I agree with David that it's very difficult then to compare. It's sort of like trying to compare apple and oranges and try to rank. Furthermore, the resource base of the universities is totally different. So then, you know, would you rank them, and how would you then start to rank them in terms of efficiency and effectiveness factors and so on? Now, having said that, of course, we're living in a consumer-oriented market, you know, environment, and rankings are sort of signals to the uninitiated as to, okay, there must be something, a proxy for quality type. Do you get your money's worth if you send your child to a certain university? I think it's in that sense that rankings do fulfill a certain signaling function, but you should not believe them too much. And universities build up, we all know, reputations, to build up reputations, to build up solid background. It takes, for universities, it takes decades, if not centuries. We won't talk about 800 years, but it takes certainly more than 10, 20, 30 years. But reputations can also be destroyed overnight, especially in today's world, and not, you know, totally by nefarious, malicious intent. So I think it's very, in today's world, while, you know, customers would like to have a single source of truth, but unfortunately rankings are not what provides a single source of truth. And so, yes, you know, we can wish away rankings. Even in our strategy, we therefore said, okay, by 2030, let's sort of aim to be ranked in the top 200. So, you know, okay, but you know, we take it all with a pinch of salt.
The one thing rankings are doing is ranking research. Typically families choosing are looking for good teaching. So actually you're choosing on a completely different scale, aside from the issues of resource. I mean, one little thought experiment is, what if those down the bottom got in addition resource? That'd be a good use of ranking. Okay? So the winner takes all, which is actually, before rankings, we knew many of the same institutions that are in the top 50 were in the top 50 at that point before rankings came along. So there were already word of mouth, reputation and so on. But we could think of, you know, quite interesting, productive, socially minded ways of using rankings to redistribute resource. That would be socially innovative.
Можно я добавлю, да? Я хочу сказать, что в Казахстане есть негативный опыт, когда ранжировали школы по тому, как дети сдали ЕНТ. И оказывалось, что когда ученики плохо сдали единонациональное тестирование, то часто бывает так, что аким вообще не смотрит, в чем причина и какова ситуация. Если вы находитесь внизу, то таким образом мы выплескиваем ребенка. И оказалось так, что иногда директора снимали с работы или вновь назначенного, или хорошего директора, от которого была польза образования, но его, к сожалению, выплеснули с водой, потому что посчитали, что вот никто не посмотрел, почему внутри. Вместо акима я бы таких действий посмотрела бы, может быть, надо помочь ему, у него нет учителя, кому-то надо дать квартиру или еще что-то сделать и изменить здесь ситуацию, а мы исключаем. Поэтому в нашем случае ранжир сыграл плохую роль, поэтому сейчас его в Казахстане нет.
Спасибо большое, Свамбагитина. Thank you so much for your comments, for your answers. But I would like to give the microphone to my colleague, who is a ranker, so who is a founder of the independent accreditation agency who is ranking higher education institutions. Шолпан Муртазовна, что вы думаете про рейтинги как автор и человек, который ранжирует наши высшие учебные заведения?
Спасибо за предоставленную возможность высказаться. Я как раз вот хотела немного про школу сказать. Мы вот школу еще не рейтингуем, да? Но дело в том, что ЕНТ это только один из инструментов, результатов, которые можно сравнить ту или иную школу. Хороший рейтинг, он обычно многомерный, он включает достаточно много информации о различных аспектах деятельности высшего учебного заведения. Допустим, мы проводим рейтинг лучших высших учебных заведений Казахстана, и он у нас является многомерным. Мы используем различные форматы, различную информацию по академическим ресурсам. Только в академических ресурсах у нас 33 параметра, из них 11 являются индикаторами. Не говоря о том, что значит, мы используем и оценку экспертов, оценку работодателей. Если говорить о мировых тенденциях, я недавно была в Болонье, где значит, проводился АЙРИК 2019, и там была и такая негативная оценка, вот выступала профессор Эллен Хейзенкорн, от OECD выступал Ван Дам, и они как бы указали на отрицательные черты глобального рейтинга, но с которыми я согласилась бы. Поэтому к рейтингам нужно подходить очень внимательно и тщательно, и они помогают студентам, потребителям, значит, государственным органам делать какую-то оценку. И я бы, знаете, посчитала бы, что надо быть осторожным. Конечно, в общем-то, если говорить о школах, может быть, здесь профессор Дэвид Бриджес, его вот высказывания можно принимать во внимание, но дело в том, что молодежи сейчас вот, им нужно всегда быстро, значит, получать результат. Они не хотят читать отчеты по внешнему аудиту, аккредитации того или иного, значит, высшего учебного заведения или другой организации образования, потому что занимает много времени. Им нужно быстро, сейчас и в этот момент получить какой-то результат. Поэтому рейтинги, несмотря на то, что кто-то не разделяет этого мнения, пользуются огромной популярностью в мире. Спасибо большое.
Спасибо большое, Шолпан Муртазовна. У нас есть еще вопросы из зала, да? Айжан и потом... Раз, два, три. Ну вот. So, two gentlemen and then two ladies and then...
My name is Aida Nazarbayev. I'm a PhD candidate in Graduate School of Education. And I have a question regarding the second book, which is University Sustainability in relation to higher education funding model in Kazakhstan in the context of transition period. And as far as we know, this book actually is based partially on the research you, Ali, conducted with your team on examining Bolashak scholarship program. But my question will be really related to this question because I'm very curious about this, and we're asking these very provocative questions. And we know that you were first who were examining return on investment of Bolashak scholarship program, and you were first who presented this research to our first president, and who was a president at the time, and who is a father of this scholarship program. What were your impressions when you were presenting this to the founder of this program, and especially when you were talking about some challenges and issues, for instance? Thank you.
Started with Aida, Rita, and Hans Vossensteyn in September 2016. So it takes 3 years to have, an outcome, as you can see. The Bolashak scholarship book is with. cost effectiveness of Bolshak scholarship, more than 20 years of evaluation that we did last year. That's a different project. We wrote the monograph. The monograph is not out yet. It's still somewhere at the president's area. I don't know. It's called High Committee. That's what I didn't present the book personally to the president, so I hope one day I can do that, but I didn't. So I think your question is about the impressions, or is about again, I think my answer will kind of reiterate some of the points I said earlier. One thing is I always try to be very careful, to not be lost in translation, especially political translation, as Aida said earlier. And we also because we were a big team. We were 7 of us from 6 of us from the Graduate School of Education and 1 person from Graduate School of Business who did this research of Bolshak. I was leading the team, but it's a group effort really. We also got a lot of great insight from experts in the level of Dr. Katsu and others, in economics of higher education. So we try to make sure that we are that the book is informing what's going on, in the field through as much theory as possible. But we want to make sure that the reflection is real. It's not. We are not saying what's not happening, but we are trying to make sure that we are saying what approximately is happening. Well, because we can't be 100% sure. It's the money. It's a lot of So, but if we are 95%, significant, that's good. That's what you learned in statistics.
Okay, thank you for questions and answers. So please brief questions and very brief answers. So, Rector, Professor Ахмедзаки.
Я на русском языке задам. Очень интересная тема. У меня волнует только один вопрос, связанный с тем, чтобы здесь сидят коллеги, которые исследовали и школьное образование, и переход потом на высшее образование. Я помню первый опыт, когда, конечно, Наталья проходила в Казгу, и мы перезачитывали кредиты Назарбаев интеллектуальной школы. Для Казгу это был такой смелый ход, тогда разрешений не было как таковых. Сейчас во всех вузах это реализовывается. Вот у меня вопрос к Дэвиду. Вы провели оценку текущего состояния школ в Казахстане. В целом, каков потенциал реального перехода к 12-летнему образованию? И, естественно, в дальнейшем, мы тем более в законе убрали, что высшее образование можно и за 3 года заканчивать, не обязательно за 4. Что потенциально не только НИШ, и другие вузы могли перейти и полностью перенять модель Болонского процесса.
The question is to you, David, so if you can answer. And then we have gentlemen.
We haven't, certainly in the research we've done collaboratively between Cambridge and NU and NIS, it was never part of our task to do an evaluation of the school system in Kazakhstan. Our research was focused on really partly descriptive, what is happening in terms of the education reform process, and what in particular we were interested in is what is the view from the centre, from people in the ministry, what are they seeking, what are they wanting to happen, and then to get right down to the school level and say, how does all this look from the perspective of teachers and parents and local communities in the schools. So it was really quite self-consciously not evaluating. It was an attempt to describe what happened in these circumstances, what, among other things, were the difficulties in communicating from the centre to the periphery. We always know there are those difficulties. Never mind international translation. There's a major task within Kazakhstan for NIS of communicating what it had developed, which drew on international practice, but also incorporated this into the Kazakhstan's own traditions. It wasn't a blind borrowing. But then there was this even more complex task in many ways of communicating that through the school system, through its in-service training programs and through other activities. So we were not making judgments about the qualities of the schools. But of course, once you started to observe that process of translation from the center to the periphery, you started to learn things about the school's own views of themselves. And one of the problems which I think the system had to overcome was the low estimation the schools had of their own capacity to interpret and reinterpret the curriculum. Because of course, in the end, it's down to the school what actually is the experience that their pupils will have in the classroom. And that depends on teachers interpreting the messages that come from the center and applying them or not applying them. And I think one of the, in a sense, rather sad things we encountered in the school system was this sense of their own powerlessness or irresponsibility. I think through their history, they got used to being told what to do. There was a phrase that people often used when we interviewed them. They said, that question is above my pay packet. Okay? If you're a head of a school, it's not your job to contribute to policy. If you're a teacher, you do what you're told to do by people up the hierarchy. And yet we know that the most effective curriculum development must involve schools in partnerships. There is, in international transfer, there is a role of the receiving body in reinterpreting, making something better and richer of whatever it sees of interest internationally. And it's the same in national transfer or communication of policy. The schools have to have a dynamic role in making the best of whatever is offered to them, textbooks in form of curriculum. And we found it sad, actually, to find people who got so used to being told what to do, they underestimated their own professional capacity to contribute creatively. Just make it's an allied point, but it's about translation. Because of our interest in translation, I started reading some of the theory of literary translation. And of course, in the translation of literature, the best translations are works of literature in their own right. In the book, we refer to the German translation of Shakespeare, which is regarded in German literature as a work of literature in its own right. The British poet Robert Graves translated things like Beowulf and recreated Beowulf as a work of merit in its own right. And I think what NIS was trying to do, and what the schools, as a process the schools need to continue to do, is to recreate curriculum in a way which is itself exciting and positive, and fits with local requirements and local circumstances. Sorry, that's an elaborate answer to an interesting question.
Yeah, thank you, David, so much. And we have the gentleman who wanted to ask a question, so please.
Для перевода надо будет. Вы можете встать? Нет, вот возле Гульнас. Да, вы.
Hello to everyone. My name is Mhammed I am the founder of Astana Garden School. I am very proud to be also the alumni of Cambridge University. 2016, and it's really a big pleasure to see you, David, here. Congratulations on the launch of the book. I have a very simple question. I believe that the launch of this book and the process was very challenging, and there is a prehistory for it. What are your plans in terms of updating the content of the book? And what changes do you see in the Kazakhstan education sector recently?
As your former president Nazarbayev, and for a long while I said, well, if President Nazarbayev can rule a country at this age, then surely I could continue doing a little bit of research or whatever. But your president has now retired, so I think it's time for me to consider my position. And I'd say I have no immediate plans for producing another book. We did, in the translations into Kazakh and Russian, provide an additional chapter, I think it's chapter 15, which was an attempt to at least bring the story a little bit up to date since the first book was published. So that's not on my agenda, but my agenda, I mean, I was interested, Susan this morning was talking about taking more of a historical perspective on the future as well as on the past. The conversation that we were part of for a while had a history, and I hope it has a future. And the conversations about education in Kazakhstan and elsewhere, these are intergenerational conversations and not just frozen at a particular moment in time. So I very much hope, and I know and hope that the collaboration between Cambridge and Nazarbayev University and Cambridge and NIS will continue. I hope there will be further production. I know there's lots of interesting research that's been taking place, and I hope that my colleague McLaughlin and colleagues here in Kazakhstan will indeed go on to produce further reflections together, because I think this is a very fruitful way of working. Somebody, well, I think I posed the question about insider and outsider. There's a wonderful Scottish poet called Rabbie Burns, who wrote in a kind of dialect form, which I won't attempt to imitate entirely, but he had in one of his poems, he sat in a church one day observing a lady with a big bouffant of hair, and he noticed a flea crawling its way up her hair. And he wrote a poem dedicated to this observation, in which he said, "Oh, would that God the gift he gives to see ourselves as others see us," which translates, would that God would give us the gift to see ourselves as others see us. And I think that is the contribution of outsider research. And I very much hope that colleagues in Kazakhstan will continue to welcome us outsiders in the years to come.